And then over the radio comes, someone said, car off the course, big crash, big crash.
It's That Car Show, and today we are joined by our pal Joe Barry, the guy behind some of the wildest, most ambitious automotive films ever made. We're talking the Grand Tour, Top Gear, Petrolicious, and now Cars and Bid's new channel, Key. Joe peels back the curtain on all of it, from the legendary Grand Tour opening sequence to the insane logistics behind global shoots, and also the moments when things didn't go exactly to plan, including that Rimac crash. We also get into the DNA of great car content, how British sensibilities shaped the genre, what it was like working with Clarkson, Hammond, and May, and why authenticity still matters more than anything else. Joe's the real deal, cool as hell, insanely talented, and full of stories you've never heard before. It's Joe Barry, and it's That Car Show.
Welcome back to this week's That Car Show, and not only is it a all-male affair, we actually have a bias this week for Britishness. So before I introduce our guest, we'll be talking about Jaguars. We will not be talking about trunks. We'll be shortening some of the things that seem to be very popular in America but are way overcomplicated. So I'm talking about eyeglasses, horseback riding, sidewalks. We're going glasses, horse riding, and pavements. But welcome to this week's show, Joe Barry.
Hey.
Hello. Thanks for having me, boys. Big fan, and I mean that very earnestly. So thanks for having me on.
I realized I should probably give you a bit of a formal introduction, Joe. So let me know how this is, and you can tell me whether I need, and we'll establish why that's important based on your background in a minute. So ready? So today's guest is someone who played a key role behind the scenes at some of the most ambitious automotive shows ever made. Joe Barry is a creative producer and filmmaker who worked on the Grand Tour and was involved with producing some of the show's car-focused films spanning ideation, planning, execution, and often across international complex shoots. He's worked alongside Clarkson, Hammond, and May, contributing to a format that has redefined automotive storytelling at a global scale. Beyond that, Joe's experience includes writing for Top Gear America, producing content with Motor Trend, and giving a well-rounded perspective on the evolving automotive media landscape. More recently, he's brought that production and storytelling expertise into the digital marketplace space, working with Cars and Bids, helping shape how enthusiast vehicles are presented, marketed, and ultimately sold to highly engaged audiences. Joe, how was that for an introduction?
Well, I don't know if I should be thanking you or ChatGPT, but either way, it was absolutely wonderful, Dan.
We call that our research department, just for future reference.
Sure.
We haven't got the big budgets that other shows have got.
No.
So
Those
Ryan,
all gone.
Ryan, how does it feel to be on an all-British show this week?
Feels good. I like the Brits. They're smarter than we are, so, we all know that.
Don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah, don't tar us all with the same brush there. Well, yeah, thanks for having me, boys. I'm glad to
have you.
come on and bring some British backup for our boy Dan here. Dan and I, who have been become fast friends, I think it's fair to say, over the past sort of half a year. And I'm thrilled to be here.
What is it about the Brits and really good car content? Is there a gene? I mean, like, you guys can't blink over there without getting a photo radar ticket, and yet you're pumping out all this great car stuff like it's going out of style. And I feel like you always have, even going way back,
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That's a good question. And it's something I think you could get really deep on, not deep, but really sort of, you could really drill into very quickly and sort of say that I think it's our sensibility when it comes to content, when it comes to the written word and video content and stuff. I think it comes down to the fact that, we have this slight sort of abashedness. We have this slight sort of sense of wanting to take the piss out of things and make things fun where they're not fun. And traversely, when you've got something very fun in front of you, kind of treat it like a really boring thing, or, there's that sort of fun interplay that I think, and again, I'm already thinking of Jeremy, who, will obviously be the subject of more than a couple of these answers, I'm sure. But, what he did so well was subvert the sort of, the space that he was born into, the space that he sort of moved into as a young man, right? Which was the really stuffy, really boring weekly newspapers
Yes.
and you know and motoring papers and classifieds and such, and he sort of took one look at that and thought, well, this is all well and good, but you know, as well as being a nation who has a great engineering background and who love cars, we're also a nation who of you know incredible comedians and you know the stuff that he and Andy Willman and the other guys separately at the time, Richard and James, were kind of ingesting, things like the Fast Show and you know Mortimer and Reeves and all those kinds of you know what were then quite sort of edgy you know 1980s 1990s comedians, that all kind of you know got together and you know in the crucible that was Jeremy's sort of torrid mind sort of created that. Yeah, not to get into the grand tour and all that stuff too quickly, but I think it does go to sort of, it suffices to kind of answer the question, which is that you know we have cool cars and a desire to do things with them, and I think where the American propensity might be to kind of go on an epic road trip and you know go cross country or go to you know go up to Death Valley because you guys have that stuff. We kind of don't. Like we do have a beautiful countryside and stuff, but as you've said, Ryan, it's a pain in the ass to drive to the countryside. Most of the time. You've usually picked up either a flat tire or a speeding ticket or you know whatever. You've got a dodgy tummy from something you ate on the motorway services. So yeah, I don't know. We kind of have to look inwards, I guess, and that's where our stuff gets it's silly, which I have always personally loved.
Dan, can you second this? Is this
I mean, I think I think you hit it right on the spot, right? In terms of there was a melting pot of things going on in the 80s and 90s, and you know, escapism was either comedy or you know entertainment of some sort, and you know when those folks hit the screen and we wanted something to watch on a Sunday night. It was a great way to kind of relax after a weekend and you know before having to think about the week.
Yeah. I'll never forget watching my first episode of Top Gear. I remember my dad saying, you got to watch this thing. It's on cable or whatever. You know, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. And I was blown away, like, because I had never seen anything like that. You know, it was so different from what we had here, and it was irreverent and it was funny and it was original and it was just, you know, it was the best thing ever. It was such a moment, right? You know, that first time watching. And so.
Oh yeah,
escapism for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and as a you know as a young without wishing to offend you, Ryan, I think we've got a couple of years on me, and so I was watching. You know,
you don't say.
Not that you look any the worse for it. Top Gear was rebooted.
I'm 33, by the way.
Oh wow!
I'm kidding.
A really, really tough paper round.
We call them city miles, Joe.
Oh boy!
I'm kidding.
But Top Gear was rebooted, I think, in 2002. So I was like a 11, 12-year-old. You know, so for me it was. Pure, you know, for you guys it was escapism. You know, you're a couple of years older than me, but for me it was, you know, it was seeing 2 6-foot-plus men and 1 5'6" man acting like the 11-year-olds that I then would go and see at school the next day, and so it was just, it was magic, and it was, it was a real moment in time. You know, often repeated, but never really sort of bested, I think it's fair to say. But and that's just one small part of, I think, or they are just one small part of the great relationship between Britain and the motor car. You know, again, without wishing to get all Encyclopedia Britannica, sorry, Ryan, but you know, we could go and talk about history and stuff, but it's more for me. It's more, you know, the other great love was growing up was Formula One, and Formula One. I don't think it does anymore, but truly to me, it always felt like a British sport. And I don't mean that in a sort of a nationalistic kind of, you know, I don't mean to sort of do anyone out of their dues. And of course, you know, Ferrari, arguably the backbone of F1 and, you know, for the past 75 years, and they're obviously not a British team. But I think between the you know, that sort of crescent moon around London of the motorsport, you know, the motorsport valley. I can see Dan nodding there, you know, where not just F1, but, you know, Pro Drive and lots of rally teams and you know, motorbike teams and everything, you know, they're all in that sort of that beautiful little area there. And, you know, all the shared engineering and knowledge that goes on there has just created this amazing village industry. And and I think that sort of really, for me, calcified the idea that F1 was kind of ours. That plus the fact that we had this sort of, you know, trio of dastardly Bond villains running the shop at the time, right? And they were, you know, obviously British, you know, God humor and all that. So yeah, I think F1, I think Top Gear, I think, you know, all the great magazines we've had, Evo, Auto Express, and, you know, all the people that have fostered and come through that system. You know, I think that's why, and that, you know, that's why we have such a rich tapestry, let's call it, of motoring content. Dan, how am I doing? Am I doing a good enough job to sell?
You're selling it when it doesn't need to be sold. But yeah, absolutely. So who were your F1 heroes growing up?
Do you know what? That's a very pertinent question, because for a couple of reasons. So, being British, my father's a big Jaguar guy. Jaguar, that is, Ryan. I'll hear nothing.
That's right. I can't say it that way to save my life, but I'm with you.
Well, actually, funnily enough, with when we were doing Top Gear America, we did an episode on saving Jaguar, and Dax Shepard was the lead host of that series, and he, for the life of him, couldn't say it. But he also couldn't say Jaguar because, I don't know, some kind of strange Michigan twang that he had. So he was calling it a Jaguar, which is always of the many butcherings of that name. Jaguar was amongst the worst. But anyway, I digress. My dad's a big Jaguar fan, always has been. And, you know, and that was how he and I bonded. Cars was our thing. That's how we bonded. You know, and I was like the kid who was writing sort of school reports on, you know, the, like, why Jaguar changed the nomenclature from SS to XK after the war, because of, you know, that was
a good move. Yeah.
Like, that was very genuine. I genuinely wrote that.
I love that.
At like 7 or 8 years old, you know, I loved all that stuff. So obviously the Jag F1 team was I was going to say prominent. They were never prominent, but they were there. And those cars looked awesome with the HSBC liveries. And I think Christian Horner was team boss back then, right? Or he certainly came to be. I remember,
didn't Jackie Stewart have an involvement?
Is that right? I didn't know that. I think.
And then Bobby Rahal, I think, was a principal for like a little while. I think this is a long time ago, but yeah, I think Irvine raced for them, did he?
Oh yeah, there was, and Mark Webber was there as a rookie. Like, it was a really interesting. I mean, again, I was just there with a sort of a blind, you know, abandon, you know, in that my dad liked them, so I liked them. But the more I've sort of, because they, you know, sadly they went and sort of never came back. So as I've sort of retroactively looked back and read up on the history, it's been quite a nice thing. But it's interesting that you ask that, Ryan, really, because I've just finished. I'm bouncing all over the place, but I just finished Andy Willman's book, Mr. Willman's Motoring Adventure, which is about, you know, his life and times with Jeremy and getting Top Gear started and then moving on through the Grand Tour. But in that book, and I literally finished it on the plane yesterday, he was talking about when he and Jeremy got to interview Michael Schumacher for a BBC One series they did called, I think, The Science of Speed. So it wasn't a Top Gear thing. It was like one of these slightly sort of off-brand, you know, I think the BBC had Jeremy and they didn't quite know what to do with him in between that period where there was old Top Gear and then there was so they sort of sent him out. He did Motor World, Jeremy Clarkson's Motoring World, or Motor World at one point, which is awesome. And Science of Speed. And in that they interviewed Michael Schumacher, and I won't just reel the book back off at you guys, but Andy basically says that, you know, and he's met a person or two in his time, and he says that Michael was the, you know, the nicest, the kindest, the most, you know, giving with his time, just the most absolute gentleman. And it got me thinking about him because, and this is where, forgive me, Dad, because you know, hindsight's 2020, and
Sure.
obviously we were all aware of the terrible thing that happened with poor Michael. But my dad absolutely hated Michael Schumacher
Oh.
growing up, and so I absolutely hated him. And I just had this sort of, you know, again, sort of, there was this red mist whenever anyone
Yeah.
mentioned him, because he was just going through such a period of domination, obviously. Well, you know, he obviously had his early win, and then he had the couple of fallow years with Ferrari. But after that, that sort of early 2000s, you know, he was just dominating, which is, you know, which showed obviously incredible engineering from the team and incredible sportsmanship from him. Well, not sportsmanship, because he could be kind of a bugger, but you know what I mean, like incredible focus and dedication
Yeah.
and athleticism. But I just, as a young impressionable kid, I hated him,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
you know, not, you know, it was not sort of grounded in rationale. And I've absolutely, obviously, kind of come to, you know, free myself of my father's like hate-filled shackles in the years
Sure.
since. And I recognize that he, Lewis, greatest driver of all time. Yes, the numbers suggest it. I think he's had races that would back that claim up in a more sort of holistic sense. But then you look at Michael and you say, well, he's got every bit as much, you know, behind the wheel talent as, you know, the other luminaries that you could count on one hand. And I would say that's Lewis. I would say that's Max, another person who I don't love, but I can't help but, you know, respect. And then, you know, Michael, Ayrton, and I mean, gosh, I've sort of painted myself into a corner by saying that I could count them on one hand, because there's definitely 3 or 4 more people, a couple of them Brits, that could fill that 5th spot. But my point being, you know, there are awesome drivers, and then there are those who were just born to drive and found their way into the Formula, you know, One series. And Michael's definitely one of them. And you just look at like who was around him, who was he fighting, you know, the car, the struggles they had with the car, and some of the performances he was able to get out of that. Like, I know Lewis is the greatest on paper, but I would still, you know, possibly throw Michael's name, you know, into that ring still. I think
Makes
phenomenal.
So growing up in the UK, was the dream always to work in television, and was it always to be in motorsport or automotive at least?
The dream was undefined, because I just didn't really know. I never really had a firm grasp of what I wanted to do. I can look back now and say, okay, well, I was like, you know, I'm quite a sort of sensitive, quite an anxious soul, but I was like but I also loved public speaking. I was always trying to be in the school plays, and always trying to sort of like be the one who like spoke in front of the class and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, and I'm dyslexic. Something that I didn't know until I was in college and university. That was when my tutor said, "Hey, your essays are fantastic, but your tests are all absolutely terrible. You know, we think we should test you for dyslexia." It just turns out that whenever you put a stopwatch in my face, I just turn to mush, and I sort of think I'm writing this like beautiful prose, and it's absolute garbage. So anyway, you know, I was a little bit anxious, but I loved performing. I loved writing, but I sort of never really got any encouragement to do it, because it was always kind of what I was thinking and what was coming out was never quite. They never quite aligned, and so I just never really had a firm grasp on what I wanted to do. And I went to culinary school very briefly, because that was something that was like there was like a cause and effect between like
tangible,
I can do this, and it looks and tastes good and stuff. So that was kind of, for a moment, I thought about that, but and again, I've got to credit my dad, who my dad left school at 14, got into the trades, carpenter, you know, still works 6 days a week now. Like, he's just an absolute grinder. But he had the beautiful sort of foresight to say, just before I was about to sort of sign on to go and do proper culinary school and really commit to that life, he sort of said, I think you're bound for sort of more creative things. I think you should give that a try. And so yeah, television kind of, which it was obviously was a medium I was always interested in. Who isn't? What young man isn't sort of fascinated by TV and the idea of making things and document. I was always furtive watcher of documentaries and sort of that late night stuff you'd find on BBC about like abstract, like Jane Goodall in the forest with the monkeys and all that kind of stuff. And that really, from my dad, who had no right to say that, like he didn't know that I could go and do that, but he just sort of threw it out there and it really lodged with me. And so I very quickly fixated on that. And got myself, I was a late administer to university. I hadn't applied to unis because I was going to go do this catering thing. And so I got into a university that I could just about scrape into with quite mediocre grades because, again, dyslexic, didn't know it yet. Yeah. And started like a TV production career with an emphasis on writing, again, because I sort of had this feeling like, I know I have ideas. I know I'm creative. Like I'm not a shy, retiring wallflower. Anyone who's listened through the first 20 minutes of this podcast, poor souls, will know that I'd like to talk and I have ideas and I like to bounce around and whatever. And so, writing and stuff. But then cars was the obvious, what do I know more about than most people? What can I offer more to a future employer, than anyone else? Cars. So that was kind of where those two ideas came. And then from that sort of, He-Man moment of the Sword and the Stone, it was like, it has to be Top Gear. I was like 20 maybe. And I was like, I got to work on Top Gear. And
that's amazing. I mean, here in the States, we had one car show on television. It was called Motor Week.
Yeah.
And I have all the respect for those guys, but it was such a different, didn't quite inspire in the same way I think that Top Gear probably did for you. But then how do you make that jump then to, okay, I'm actually now working there?
Yeah. So I rounded out my university degree and as is the way with the unique way that the United Kingdom university graduation procedure is structured, they kind of go, okay, here you go, and then you're like, now what? I really sort of, I'm pretty easygoing, and I sort of tend, like my wife's the kind of angry person who sort of is still angry about something that happened to her 20 years ago. I've sort of forgiven everything,
What's the secret, Joe? Because I'm with your wife. How do I work through this? How do I level up? What do I do?
I think it's just that ignorance is bliss, to be honest with you. I just like to I like to just reset every night and just empty my brain, empty the recycle bin of my brain, and just wake up afresh in the morning. But yeah, I've forgiven, everything, all of the many injustices. But I will not and will never forgive, for me and for the millions of others of us that went through the sort of university system I graduated in 2012, the lack of careers advice. They kind of just shoved you into, mine was exactly the last year that university fees were capped relatively low. So I was only paying sort of £3,000 per year to attend university. And because of that, or not because of that, I'm not sure where the cause and effects come. I'm not really up on the economics of it, but what I'm trying to say was like everyone was at university, basically. Like anybody could get into college, and some good colleges, and there was just this kind of like culture of cramming you into a course that, the first course you said you were interested in, you're doing that, and then nothing. And you sort of come out of the other end of it and you go, okay, now I've got this. I didn't even get a piece of paper. I actually never got a certificate. Anyway, I'm just remembering that now. But you're sort of like, what do I do? So, as all good self-respecting people do, I moved back in with my parents, which lasted for 2 months. Before, again, my dad, we were washing his Jaguar XKR one Sunday afternoon.
Quality vehicle, yeah.
Lovely car. And very affordable now, worryingly so. That's one of those cars that sort of scares me.
You get them on auction sites, I hear.
Yeah, well, if you know any good auction sites, Dan, let me know. But
we'll come on to that later.
Yes, we will. But he said, look, you can stay with us all you want, but you're not doing anything. So get down to London, get down to that big London. I grew up in Shropshire, rural Shropshire. It's sort of on the borders with Wales there. Very rural. You know, my
Cool. Yeah.
grandparents were all farmers, like my you know. So yeah, he said, get down to London, get yourself a TV job. I put in over 100 CVs, resumes
Really?
into every sort of, you know, TV position I could find, and nothing came of it. So I did the next best thing and got a job at a bar next to a TV production company. My rationale being there would be producers in there, either celebrating or drowning their sorrows, and I would, you know, I would get to eventually sort of interface with these people. And yeah, after a couple of months, got a job with someone.
It's
It was with.
genius.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was my first TV job was on a show called Geordie Shore, which is our version of Jersey Shore. That
Yeah.
that luminary of educational television.
Ryan was reminiscing about that show.
Watched every single one, Joe.
There
No
you go.
regrets. But I cannot imagine how that translated, I guess, to the UK. I guess.
Yeah, it was.
You tell
it
us,
was-
but
Yeah, it was messy. It was like I've sort of pretty gross. It was supposed to
That's a
say
good
it
word.
wasn't what I was trying to do. You know, it wasn't who
yeah.
I was. You know, but it was a job. It was great. And then basically for the next sort of 2-ish years, I basically within my little freelance bubble that was sort of growing, I just tried to get closer. And I sound like a stalker or something, but I was just trying to get closer to Top Gear. I was like every move I was making was, well, obviously the first question I'd ask myself was, does this job pay? Do I need the money? You know, I was living in an attic in a place down in South London. The rent was £525 a month. Like it was, you know, the good old days comparatively.
Yeah.
And so I sort of I was earning peanuts, but spending peanuts. And I was basically just plotting this map and trying to get to Top Gear, even though I knew it would be a long shot, even though I knew that show has like historically low turnover. No one ever leaves, you know.
Sure.
And I was just trying to sort of get my way there, and I managed to sort of have some fun along the way. And I got to do some cool stuff at the BBC. I did a documentary. I spent a week with Professor Stephen Hawking.
Really?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what how if we're allowed to still celebrate him. I'm not sure what's going on there politically. Culturally, or I don't know what. I probably shouldn't have brought it up, but I got to spend a week with him, and that was a special experience for me as a 21-year-old. Like it was you know, it was you know, and that was kind of BBC Science, and I was like, oh my gosh, all right, I'm now in. I've got a BBC email, I can do this.
Hey, at least you were 21, Joe.
Yeah, and well, I may have been a little bit. I might have been 22 or something by that point. But anyway, and then Jeremy had the famous fracas with the producer of Top Gear. They had their physical altercation, and Top Gear got suspended, and that was sort of dreams dashed for me, and probably thousands of other people. And so I sort of went back into, just doing whatever I was doing. I think I was working on a television program about tattoo removal. Fascinating subject.
Oh, wow.
For another time. and it was my birthday.
Have questions, yeah.
Yeah, right. And it was my birthday. It was my 25th birthday, actually. So I may have skewed the numbers there. I worked in TV for a few years before the car thing happened. It was my 24th birthday. 24th. And I got a call from Andy Willman, and it was like, hello, it's Andy. And I'd sent my CV in just offhand when I saw that they'd penned the deal with Amazon. I sent in a resume and a covering letter, and I got this call from this lovely gruff voice. And, he sort of didn't give anything away, but said, come in for a meeting next week. And I went in for a meeting. And he was late, which if anyone here knows Andy will know that's par for the course. But he had brought 2 coffees, one black, one white. And he said, which one do you want? And I said, I drink black coffee. And he said, well, you can have the one with milk in it because I drink black coffee. It's like, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. And yeah, we had a lovely chat. I obviously lost my head as soon as I got in there and started talking about owning all the, straight to VHS Jeremy Clarkson videos and this and that. And the rub of it was, you'll like this, boys. Firstly, he had a stack of CVs, this high on his desk, but mine was there. And he made a point, such a theatrical man, of picking it up off the pile and saying, this is your CV, right? and it was my resume with my cover letter that I'd written stapled to the front. And he turned it over, opened it up so I could see the CV, and the CV had a giant red cross through it, like a comically placed, comically thick, sharpie, giant red cross through it, because my resume did not have any car stuff on it, right? I had cleaned up the sick of some idiots in Newcastle. I had removed some tattoos. I'd worked with, Stephen Hawking. I'd done a few other films and shows, but like nothing.
Yeah, that's a hell of a CV right there.
It was eclectic, let's call it that. And so on merit of that alone, it was a big fat no from Andy. However, he then folded the cover letter back to the front, and that had a nice little, and it wasn't even green, which, I mean, narratively speaking, if the cross was red, the tick should have been green for my feelings, but actually it was black, I guess, and it was a tick. And he basically said, look, your covering letter, where I'd written about love of cars, love of Formula One, relationship with my dad and how much that had influenced, who I am, blah, blah, blah. That was what got me the job. And it was that sort of, I suppose, is proof that you should always write a little note, I guess, because that really did sort of make my life in a lot of ways,
God, yeah.
Yeah. And then we were away after that. That was it.
Wow. What was the feeling like walking out of that meeting?
Yeah, unbelievably surreal, very genuinely.
Yeah,
It's sort of, it's funny, isn't it? How in the moment you sort of deal with it, you move through it, and you go, oh, yeah, cool. But the more I would look back on it, the more I think this is, how many people, and I don't want to sound like, I know I just got to work on a television show. I know it's not, solving world hunger or anything, even remotely important. But how many people get to achieve a dream? And I was like 24, and I had this chance to do this thing. It was really a golden ticket moment. It was a real, a real wow moment, quickly followed by a oh shit moment, because it was quite the 3 years. It was quite the experience.
So did you work on from episode 1 all the way through?
Yeah, so I was trying to work this out this morning so that I could be accurate. And I should say as well, I worked from 2015 when the boys signed. The boys signed in like August. They hired me in September. We shot the first films in October and November. And then we were away to the races. And then, that was season 1. I did season 1, which was 15-16, season 2, and then about half of season 3. So I did that sort of 2015 to 2018, the sort of real run of films that made up the 36 episodes of TV. That was my stint. But I should say, even though I was there for those like 3 years, I still only played a small part. You're like a junior producer, and then you're a producer. I have to say there was an incredibly talented team. We were small. It was a small team. It would be like 3 researchers, 3 junior producers, 3 producers, 2 directors, and then, Andy and the higher ups, series producer and the boys and such. So it was still only like, and then like the other side of the office was all the sort of money and the logistics and stuff. So there was still only like maybe 25 of us at full tilt, but still, it was, I hasten to add that I was a part of a team and not some kind of like, genius savant that was kind of there pulling the strings. But, so
the first episode, there was rumors when it came out that it was spending a large amount of Amazon's budget on the opening scene.
Well,
what was the planning like, and what was the actual story behind that? And for those that have not seen that opening scene, go onto Amazon and watch it. It's epic.
It is a good one. And I want to pull you up on one thing you say, Dan, which was you said that we were spending Amazon's money. The funny thing about that is, and this speaks to what, terrible businessmen, Jeremy, James, Richard, and Andy were. Once they signed the papers and got that big chunk, but basically what the contract was Amazon gives the production company that the boys set up a big chunk of money, a really big chunk of money. And they have to deliver in receiving that, they have to deliver 36 episodes of what was legally termed first class content. That was like that was the term that was put in the contracts. There was no, so where conventionally in TV, you will have to, before you get anywhere near the money, you have to present the budget. That'll be,
Okay.
Gone over with a fine tooth comb. The channel will probably say, right, okay, but we're not going to give you that much for that because we don't like that idea, blah, blah, blah. This was done completely the opposite way. It was like, here's, many tens of millions of dollars, pounds, deliver us some TV, and you guys keep the leftovers. That was what the boys got paid out of, was whatever was left over. So when Jeremy then started, having these massive brainwaves about epic, Mad Max style desert sequences in California, he wasn't spending Amazon's money, really. He was spending his own, because he could have just done a very conventional intro, or done the same thing but in Ludlow, and it would have cost nothing, but he decided to go big. Same with the tent, the tent moving around the world for our first season. That was like 5-6 million pounds when it for that first season.
Wow.
When it could have been a TV studio that would have cost them I don't know what, 100 grand for the whole run.
That makes it all the more cool. I mean, that's just that's so cool. That is so cool. And there was so much riding on those first few seconds, and he knew that, right? It was got to be all or nothing, right?
Oh yeah, and that is his genius, I suppose, is knowing what the moment demands, what the people want, having the narrative worked out, not just the narrative of the thing that we were trying to craft, but the whole narrative. When he sort of told us, when it filtered down to us, I guess, that we were going to do this thing, and you think about it, or if you read it off a piece of paper, Jeremy looking forlorn. I think he's like in a Greasy Spoon cafe, isn't he, or something, having a cup of tea, looking sad. Well, respectfully, mate, you're sad because you got fired because you punched somebody, and he's the first to admit that. Like, he's not, he was not bashful about that. Something happened and he got reprimanded for it. He handed himself in at the BBC, and that's, so when we heard these things, they sort of, some of us in the office were a bit like, okay, I don't know about this. Some of this, in the song, the Hot House Flowers version of
right.
I forget the name.
I can see clearly now. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. All these things, it was like, right, okay, and obviously you're going to do it. You're going to obviously make it happen for Jeremy, but some of us didn't see the vision, and I was definitely one of those. It was like, this is weird. We're a car show. Can't we just do, this week on the Grand Tour? Jeremy's trousers fall down. James, gets drunk, whatever. But no, and so we set about doing this thing, which was which meant getting, I think it was like 150 cars for that opening scene, and they trailered everyone in, and again, sounds very easy to go and drive on a dry lake bed, and it really isn't. It's especially at that scale, it's unbelievably complex and complicated. And the tent, we had the tent there. We were having a music festival, obviously, with the Hot House Flowers, and it was just and we were still, bear in mind, still filming actual episodes, like films to go and make episodes. We'd had such a truncated sort of planning process, and then it was like, get to shooting. And we were still sort of catching our tails. Meanwhile, trying to do this, sort of orchestrate this world tour with this huge epic sort of Mad Max set piece. It really was amazing. And I went and rewatched it, because again, you get too close to these things, right? And certainly the way it would work with us was like, we'd ideate in January. So you come back from Christmas, you would spend a month in the office throwing ideas. So you'd be like, I was the sort of of the three of the producers that I worked with, I was like the car one. I did the car stuff, like real sort of like, supercar stuff. And then my friend Tom was doing the sort of really crazy adventure stuff. He would always do the specials and all the kind of like really scary, like Namibia and all that kind of stuff. And then our friend Pete did all the builds and all the kind of like slightly techie stuff and all the engineering and whatever. So we'd spend our first month of the year throwing those ideas, just getting, finding news stories, finding new cars that have been announced, whatever, finding locations, finding towns with silly names, and kind of just putting them all there in front of the boys in this big, lovely brainstorm, and kind of saying, what can we do with this? There are all these towns in Germany with very rude names. What can we do with this? That was the kind of what we would do all through January, you'd sort of start planning stuff in Feb, and then basically like March through September, October, you'd be filming. You know, there always the boys would just be gone constantly. You know, and you'd be filming, and then we'd do the studio in the back end of the year. So it was just relentless. It really was, you know. And I think, again, thank God I was young, because I had the energy and stuff to deal with it.
But when you go back and you watch that first episode, you get chills like the rest of us?
Big time. And again, because I had sort of, thank you for bringing me back on point, because I got too close to it, and I was sort of like, by the end of my run, I was like, oh God, enough of this, please. But being able to go back and rewatch it, and certainly rewatch those first few episodes where we were so heavily sort of handicapped in what we were doing. We didn't have, this is going to sound like sort of, unjust moaning, but like, we didn't have things like company credit cards. We didn't have an account established yet with the company that we would rent our Land Rovers for. Yeah. So it was like, you were just like, just everything was a stress. Like everything was unjustly stressful. Like, we're going to France next week to buy 3 Maserati bi-turbos. How am I going to pay for them? I'll the production manager put 40 grand in my personal account to go buy these, so that someone could go buy the cars. And you're like, well, this is weird. This is not making TV. This is like running around with a load of cash. And
In retrospect, don't you think that was part of the recipe of the magic, or for the magic? I mean, that was, that you were doing it on the fly, that you were sort of, I don't know, kind of freestyling, I guess, for lack of a better
I think
term.
so. I think the boys found a bit of creativity in it as well. I think, again, to go back to Andy Willman's book, he sort of talks about the ebb and flow of Top Gear. There were those first couple of seasons where they were still figuring it out, 2002, 3, 4. There was a change in personnel with Jason Dawes moving out and James coming in and stuff like that. And then they were just kind of still trying to do consumer stuff, but there was obviously the Top Gear, the sort of Tinder was sort of lit. Then they sort of had that epic sort of meteoric rise, that rounded them out to maybe 2012, 2013. But then he says that like the next few years up until they got cancelled, everything started to get a bit fraught. Everything started to stagnate slightly. They'd maybe done all the good ideas. They were sort of starting to recycle a few bits. I mean, they still made amazing stuff. And like, as a viewer, and I'm so glad that I get to just be a viewer of all that awesome Top Gear stuff. It still, to me, reads as fantastic, as like flawless. But for him and for the boys, I think there was like a slight stagnation and a slight sort of like creative lull. And I think they refound that with the Grand Tour. I think, between the change in employers, the slight change in format, the de-restrictions. And I think, to your point, even though, it's not punk because we had millions of pounds, but like it was quite DIY. It was quite punk there, and I think that was really cool. And again, they still, being the pros they are, they still sort of whittled away and refined it. And you find by season 2, I think the boys are really on full song. All the films are awesome. The studios are really tight. Like, being able to rewatch it and go back is a real privilege, real honor.
Yeah. You'll always have that on your shelf, right? This amazing thing.
It's a door opener, and I'm sort of like, I'm quite cautious. It's funny, I say this knowing that we've been talking about it for the last half an hour or whatever, but like, I'm quite cautious to try not to talk about it too much because it meant so much to me, and because it meant so much to pretty much everyone I sat with, recreationally or work-wise, because we're all car people and we all love that blooming show and we love those 3 boys. I don't want to sound like a one-track pony or whatever, but it is the perpetual door opener. It is the thing for me and for my career that has kept on giving. Like it's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that I live and work in America is in no small part down to the fact that I worked on the Grand Tour, and the fact that I got to go and work at Motor Trend and sort of get this lovely sort of second life as a car journalist. So again, something that I never thought, between my background and just between the fact that I'd sort of picked my career path as a TV guy, I didn't think I'd get to go and do journalism, but through a combination of factors, not least the fact that I'd sort of done that show, I got a little helping hand and got to try that out and stretch that muscle. So yeah, it's I'm so thankful and appreciative, and I feel I haven't seen the guy. I saw them and I saw Andy like maybe 2 years ago. We all had a big wrap party when the show sort of formally ended. Sure. I was obviously long gone, and I was quite touched to get an invite actually, because I'd since moved away, and I hadn't worked. I finished with them in 2018, and this was 2023 or 4 that we had the party. I can't remember when they finished, but I got an invite, and I was thrilled to go and to see everyone, and there was a real celebratory sense in the air. Everyone was just sort of happy, I think, that it was over.
Sure.
The guys that were still working on it,
and hard not work, I mean,
yeah, but quite a legacy that they've got.
Legacy's the word.
Are there any segments or episodes that you're like most proud of from that time?
Well, yeah, I would. It's funny. It's probably not the ones that if you looked at the list of films that I did, or even, more specifically the stuff that I like really, because it's an office where you're all sharing ideas, you're all dipping into each other's films and helping out. Even if you don't go on every film, you've definitely helped on every film. So you feel a sense of ownership over all of it, a sense of pride around all of it. But there are ones that were yours, whether because you actually went or because you went and you had this idea and it got used, or, So from season 1, the Grand Tour, the one where we went to Italy and pratted around in a DB11, and we got Richard a Hellcat, Charger Hellcat, I think. Was it a Charger? And that was amazing. And I still, I don't know. I don't think Andy's going to listen to this. I think I came up with the name The Grand Tour, but I never got credit for it, because I came up with that film and I was like, I sort of said, hey, we should go to Italy in supercars and do this and that and look. And there was actually this sort of like, kind of like the Route 66 or the North Coast 500 that we have in England, England, no, in the United Kingdom. Sorry to all my
Scotland,
Scottish.
I believe you're fine.
Sorry to all my. Oh, geez, cancelled. There's the thing in Italy called the Grand Tour.
Right.
It's this beautiful route of roads that sort of goes right up the spine of the country, and I'd sort of put that under their noses, and then like 3 or 4 weeks later, the white smoke rose from Jeremy's office, and he stood on the balcony and said, "We're going to call the show the Grand Tour," and I was there like waiting for the Marks and Spencer's gift card that never came. But but that one I love because it was. Because I just feel a particular sense of ownership. It's not even the best film, but it was just such a good time. It was, supercars in Italy. It felt like after the struggles, the early part of filming, and that was, when I say struggles, I mean things like we did this film that everyone hates. I didn't go on it, thank goodness, but like it, when something doesn't go quite as well as it should, it sort of permeates, right? And it sort of like casts doubts, and it just infects the office, I should say. Yeah. So yeah, we did this film that was like a Tom Cruise Live, Die, Repeat style kind of weird thing. Like no one likes that film, and not that we knew it at the time, but like so we'd done that. We'd done this film in Barbados, which I went and did that, where we sank a load of old cars to make some coral reefs. Like. Right. It didn't have any driving in it. I don't think anyone turned a wheel for a week. And that was like a weird one and stuff like that. So then to go to Italy with, Grand Tourers and prat around for a week, that was awesome. I've got a particular affinity for the Maserati bi-turbo film that we shot in northern France because it's cheap cars, because, it was that was the first one that we did. It was like I like, it was one of those shoots as well where it was just like cold and miserable for the entire week, and everything went wrong, and there were like at least 2 nights of literal zero sleep for the mechanics and a couple of us producers, because the cars were so bad. But then
they were bad new. Like, let's just establish that.
Oh,
they were.
God, I know. Yes, Ryan, but they're so tempting. You look at them and you're like, oh, God. I saw a bi-turbo in LA recently, and I just thought, my goodness me, I'd look good driving that.
They've kind of come into their own, It's I got to give you credit, just as someone who's worked in advertising and design and branding his whole life. The Grand Tour is a truly wonderful name, and the way that it dovetails off of Top Gear, the 2 syllables and everything else, it's kind of wonderful. And so if you came up with that,
Well,
I just all the more credit to you because
listen, Ryan. Firstly, thank you. I'm going to bank it. I'm going to put that in my pocket. That's safe. That's coming home with me. But I will say two things. Firstly, I think those thanks should probably be directed to some poor Italian tourist board creative, because he definitely came up with it. I just saw it and happened to put it under someone's nose at the office.
Joe, it's not the inventors, it's the innovators.
Well,
right?
Hey, that's right. I mean, success has many fathers, right? But failure is an orphan. So I think, I don't want to claim. I did just claim it. I claimed it, and again, I feel like the statute of limitations has gone on that. I definitely did not come up with that. I didn't not come up with it, but I also maybe didn't come up with it. So who knows? Maybe I did. You'll have to find out, and you'll never find out. Stop me from talking, please, before I get emails from Amazon.
I declare it so.
Okay.
And yeah, I love it. No, really. Dan, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so whilst there was so many highs, there were a couple of lows during the seasons. And in one in particular, when you guys were in Switzerland, and it was almost a near-death experience, and you were on that shoot?
Yeah, I was, and that was, again, I don't know if I'm getting old or something, but it's something I've been thinking about more. And I guess because I was reading Andy's book, and he talks about it in there as well. But so that was my first shoot as like a fully fledged producer. So like year one, we were like junior producers. We always had someone with us who was like a hand holder, who was like, this one, and especially that section of this film, I was like it, and it was like very scary for that to be happening on a shoot that I didn't control it, we still had a director, and we still had like lots of us, at my level, but like still it was like a pretty terrifying thing. And we had lobbied. It's not like we didn't have money, but as we all know, but by season 2, Jeremy and the boys and Zoe, who ran the money side of things, had worked out that by spending big, they were spending their own money, in that sort of roundabout way. They were eating into the bottom line that would eventually be a payout that they would all split, right? So whilst we were still spending big on season 2, we had to justify stuff a little bit more than season 1, where the onus was like, we need a television show, go out and make it. Oh, we need to helicopter everyone to this place? Great, do it. Does it mean the shoot continues? Yes, do it. Season 2, it was like a little bit more justification. And we were doing a hill climb in Switzerland, which famously banned all forms of, legitimate motor racing for several decades after that horrific crash in Le Mans in 55. And still to this day, I don't think really has any form of, circuit stuff. There's just nothing going on there. Hill climbs, they love. They've got lots of hills and they love rules. Therefore, FIA sanctioned hill climbs, they absolutely love. And this was an FIA sanctioned one. The guys that we were speaking to, the guys that I made contact with, were like proper sanctioned FIA guys and whatever. And because of that, they really made us play by the rules in a way that I found as a producer really frustrating, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, just let us come and do the thing. And they're like, well, Jeremy hasn't got his hill climb license. And, well, none of them did, and so because of that and lots of hoops to jump through, we ended up running the boys in an exhibition class. So they weren't actually competing with all the many actual, legit hill climbers that were there that day. They were going up, like a bunch would go up, like a class of cars would go up for 20, 30 minutes. Then there'd be like a road sweeper would go up and clear the track or whatever. And then the boys would do like these kind of parade laps. And we were told, and they were told not to push. Like push for cameras, which is different to pushing for time, right? And so yeah, they were, that's what they were doing. But we had spoken with the event organizers beforehand about health and safety, and they were like, yes, there will be, health and safety there. In England, we have the St. John's ambulance. I don't know what the American equivalent is, but they're sort of like a volunteer ambulance service that goes to football games and like gives you like biscuits and aspirin if you break your leg,
Get the vapors,
yeah. So it was like a pretty low key medical footprint, let's say, at this place, and we had lobbied them to have more people, and they said no, because why would they pay for something we wanted, whatever. So we'd gone back and asked Andy and the guys if we could sort of put the local, wasn't that local, but the local air ambulance on standby.
Oh.
And now they weren't going to be on standby because I don't know if it was because it was off season, like because it wasn't ski season, so they weren't, or maybe it was like like I don't know, just like that, just that day, it just happened to be that day or something. But they weren't going to be the ambulance helicopter men weren't going to be where the ambulance helicopter thing was, and we wanted that there, so we paid like a lot of money to have them on standby, hoping we'd never need them. And of course, like we always, you've always got a couple of guys, a couple of trained firefighters, jaws of life, medical apparatus. You always have that on a big car show, and you hope you never need them, and you never do. And every time that you're totting up the totals of your shoots after the fact, you go, yeah, and we spent $4,000 on those guys, and that's money we're never getting back. But the day you need them, thank goodness that they're there. And in this case, where we'd paid extra to have this air ambulance like put on standby or whatever, and it got Richard out. They got Richard off the ground within about 6 or 7 minutes. I think they were on the ground, and they got him up. Pretty amazing. But yeah, the crash was horrible. So the boys would go up 1, 2, 3 staggered, 15, 20 seconds in between them. And what we were doing, because it was like obviously it's with it being a hill climb, it was a one-way system, one-way hill from start to finish. And then you'd have to like meander your way around the backside of the mountain via like 2 or 3 little villages to get back to the start point. It was a bit of a faff. And so what we've been doing all day was the boys go up, I was following behind them in like a pace car kind of thing. Once we got up to the top, they'd be pulled over in a lay-by and a pull-out there. I would go past them, and then I had flashing lights, and I would like lead them back to the start line. And it had worked like perfectly 5 times. The boys had done 4 or 5 good runs, and we got them, kept them away from the baying crowds and all this kind of stuff, because it was, crowd control was like a big deal with the boys. Like they were just so busy whenever there were people around. And then we decided to do one more, and of course that was the one where I'm like trundling up, probably had my arm out of the window of this thing, one more last run, and then we're all going back to the hotel kind of thing. And then over the radio comes, someone said, car off the course, big crash. And the thing that scared me the most, I don't know if I've ever really told anyone this, but so Jeremy was driving the Aventador. I think it was an SVJ, was it? I can't remember. I think it was. And he's a big bloke, tall, and the FIA stewards had obviously mandated that everyone wears a helmet. And so when Jeremy had put his helmet on and tried to get in the car, this is on the morning of the scene, the morning of the race, mind you, he just couldn't do it. He was fully sort of, neck at 45 degrees. Which presented a big problem. And again, and we've not really touched on this, but just his problem solving, and not just like evasive maneuvers problem solving, but his like problem solving that always seems to benefit the film, make the film better, came into play. And we had this like very, very sweet, very young, driver with us from Lamborghini. He was just there as a bit of a minder of the car. He was in the Lamborghini drivers program at some at some level. He was obviously a damn good driver, but he was just there. And all week really he'd been with us. He'd just been sort of filling the car up with gas and all that kind of stuff. And Jeremy said, I don't know what his name actually was, but I think Jeremy gave him some like, regressive Italian, name. Hey, Paolo, come over here or whatever. And was like, you're going to drive for me, right? You're going to drive for me. And that's where the beat came where Jeremy had like, put this little Lamborghini driver
in.
Put it in, and therefore Jeremy's lap times were great, or Jeremy's hill climb times were great. That was like the beat of the film. But for that final run, and I don't know why, Jeremy, I think he just wanted to do it, just wanted to drive. So he got in without a helmet. And again, I think this final run we were going even slower than before. So it was really like not a big deal, other than for the pencil pushers in the FIA or whatever. But So Jeremy had gone up without a helmet. So anyway, when this radio call comes through, car off the track, and Jeremy had been the last one up, I thought it was him. And so I'm thinking, well, not only has he gone off the track, but he's not wearing a helmet. And that really, I remember, like, again, I've been sort of quite fortunate up until then. I'd like not dealt with, a big accident, work or otherwise, hadn't lost anyone or had any sort of, scary moments in life or whatever, really. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, bloody hell, this is a big real moment that's about, and I'm sort of racing up this hill. All of a sudden, my pace has changed from like ambling up, listening to like whatever crap Swiss radio station I was listening to get up this hill. And I got up there, and thank goodness the Lamborghini was there on the hill. It wasn't Jeremy that had crashed. And I looked down, and there's just the Rimac was like white and blue. And I just saw the black carbon fiber underside of the Rimac about 300 feet away and like 200 feet down. It was like a really steep slope. Wow. It was really not what you want to see. So problem one was this. Jeremy had pulled the Aventador over right there, where he'd seen that Richard had gone off ahead of him, right? He'd gotten out and had his mobile phone out and had started filming. And which you can say that's heartless, or you can say whatever you want about that, but it's fair to say we didn't have any cameras there. Like we were way beyond the finish point for some reason. That's where Richard had chosen to have a crash, where there was no cameras to cover it. We had to pay some Swiss dude like many tens of thousands of euros to license his YouTube footage for the films. The footage you see of the car going off the road is like some fellow with a handycam who's now 30 grand richer or whatever. Wow. So Jeremy had taken his phone out and had like started or gestured towards starting filming, at which point a marshal, a really stocky marshal, had come over to Jeremy, quite rightly, probably, especially not being sort of aware of the situation. None of us were aware of the situation, but you know what I mean, aware of the interplay and who Jeremy was to Richard and whatever. This guy had sort of started saying, no photos, no to Jeremy, and was like in his face and was like pushing him, and Jeremy was kind of like, holding him off because there was like quite a size disparity, but like, and he had his phone here and he was sort of holding him off. But I could see that was like weirdly in my mind, that was problem number one, because it was 10 feet away from me rather than 300 feet. And I could quickly deal with that. So I sort of weirdly, and this was not my dynamic with Jeremy, but I just, panic and everything. I just got between them and just sort of like pushed this guy away and sort of like did the same kind as Jeremy and then sort of said to the steward, I said, we got to go help the driver. We got to go down there, obviously. And so I start like running down this hill, and I do remember thinking, I'm going to see my friend's gut. Like it was and that's like, again, like you sort of things you'll never forget. And thank God it wasn't as bad as it was, nowhere near as bad as it could have been. But I do remember thinking, am I going to see Richard, not looking good. And yeah, so I'm running down, and what's interesting is the Rimac, which was an awesome car, and like I had to foster that relationship, like from finding in whatever car magazine, Auto Express or whatever, from finding that like there's a new car in Croatia and it's 120 horsepower, 1200 horsepower, whatever. From that and putting it under the boys' noses and them going, that's not real. That's never going to exist. There have been many cars that look like that, and many cars from companies, of that scale. Yeah. It doesn't exist, and it never will. So from that to getting in touch with wonderful Marta, if anyone knows Marta, the head of PR at Rimac, and now obviously at Bugatti, like getting in touch with her, and she's like, yes, it's real. And they were trepidatious. They'd only built like 7 or 8 cars of that concept one, and so they, as much as they sort of recognized that it was like a big deal to get the car on the show, they didn't have any cars to give us. They had to get one of the early investors, personal car and give it to us. And that had relied on me and Richard flying to Croatia to meet them and take a factory tour, which was something. Oh, wow. When they asked for that, I was like, that's never going to happen because he's just too busy. Not that he doesn't want to, but like, where am I going to find 2 days to fly him in for a meeting for a car that we might not even get? You know. So anyway, I fostered this relationship. I love this car. I love this company, whatever. And now I'm seeing it like on its roof, you know, and but what's interesting was it had little and again, like it's only 10 years ago, but still, if you know, things have come on so far that like some of the things that were in the rim, even just the fact that it was an electric car was pretty nutso back then. You know? But like it had buttons for door handles, and we'd been talking about them all week and about how do we like them, do we not like them? You know, all the crew had different opinions, and one of our professional drivers that would come with us on shoots and would help us, like basically once the guys had like finished the road trip, we would sometimes do the road trip again in reverse to get more shots, just get boring shots of like the cars on a highway, you know, stuff like that. The boys aren't going to sit and do that, so we do it for them, kind of thing, with these pro drivers. And one of the wonderful pro drivers, a guy called Mauro Callo, who has since had an amazing career as a stunt driver in all the Mission Impossible films and a lot of the Fast films and Gran Turismo and F1 and stuff. He's the madman that took an R35 Skyline and turned it into a camera car. So it's like the world's fastest. It's like the world's fastest camera car, and therefore he's a busy boy now. But he had, I guess, been talking with one of the Rimac representatives and about these door handles, and that Rimac person had mentioned to Mauro, yes, but in the event of a crash there is a manual release for them, it's down here by the seat. And he'd shown Mauro, and Mauro had then, not for any reason other than sort of anecdotally, had then shown Richard. And then that afternoon Richard had to use that, and we're very thankful that he did, because that car, when I was running down to it, was on fire. Like it was, there were little smoke and little sort of weird green flashes of flame. And yeah, it was horrible. And Richard sort of dropped himself down, dragged himself out. His knee was busted. The first thing he said to me was like, he said two things. He said, "Where's my Rolex?" Because his Rolex had flown off in the crash. And then he was like, "Call Mindy, call Mindy," rather than call his wife, which we did. And so he's laying there getting some first aid. The helicopter's landing. He's on the phone. My phone's on his chest. He's like telling Mindy it's going to be okay, whatever, all this stuff. The car's like, noxious fumes are coming from this thing. It's still only like 20, 30 feet away from us. And we're getting pretty stressed about that. And then he gets airlifted. We as a crew, we go down and collect all our crew and sort of, you know, exfiltrate out. And we had a bunch of like Land Rovers, and we were piling all the crew into these Land Rovers so that we can get off the hill and get back down to base and regroup. And no matter which way we try with these 3 Land Rovers and this, you know, probably like 16 of us or whatever, we just can't get everyone in. And so I say that we could just about get 15 in, but we couldn't get 16 people in. So I said, "Go down, someone come back for me." And the second that the split rear tailgate on the third of those 3 Land Rovers shut, and I was alone essentially on this hill, I turned around and just burst into tears. Like it was just the emotion. It was like such a weird thing, like such a wave of like fear. And I hadn't been scared until that point. But then I was like, you know, very scared. And yeah, it was a real stress. But hey, it was good TV, guys. And that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters, is it not?
Well, moral of the story, it was good TV. Love it.
Yeah. What an amazing, you're a young guy. And the fact that you've had all these amazing adventures is, you know, so many people just never even get a taste of that. Right. It's heavy, you know, it's heavy. It's
What was the attraction moving to the US?
The US, that's a funny one. Again, I'm doing the dream thing, right? I'm working on the Grand Tour. And it really had been, you know, was the dream. Top Gear was the dream. That became Grand Tour, and that was the dream. And then we were doing it, and it was exciting. But still, you find yourself sat in a really quite crappy office at like 4 p.m. on a Tuesday in February, and it's been raining since October. And you're in West London, and you open up Instagram, and you see sun-soaked, you know, scenes of 250 California's driving up and down, you know, the Snake and stuff. And it just, firstly, it appealed from a visual sense and from a change. I think I don't like to stay still for too long. So, you know, even as we got into that third season, I kind of knew that I was kind of moving on at some point. And then it appeared because it looked cool, and because it was warm and all that kind of thing. But it also, you know, that was 2018, and even by then, I think we all knew, and especially with the failed Drive Tribe experiment, the sort of version 1 of Drive Tribe, if anyone remembers that, like, we all knew that the future was online. And well, we were online, right? We were on a big streamer, but still, we knew the future wasn't TV shows with a budget of 150 million pounds or whatever we ended up having. It wasn't that much, but you know what I mean, like mega bucks money. And so, yeah, the sort of appeal was, get to America, which sounds nice. And you know, and that's where seemingly in Los Angeles at that time, with Petrolicious, with the early incantation of Donut and Ray, you know, I don't know if Ray Service was right, but anyway, there was like a bunch of stuff going on. Jay was already doing his stuff. Like, it just seemed that the world was moving online. The car content space was moving online. And I just kind of wanted to capture that. And so, yeah, I managed to get a job with Petrolicious, which was awesome. Again, I think like you couldn't have asked for a more different experience to go from big budget, big car show to, you know, 2 kids running around with a couple of cameras and turning out films for like $1,000, $1,500. But when you talk to people in our community, a lot of them, Petrolicious will be one of the first things they say when they talk about, you know, content that they love. And Petrolicious has obviously been through its own ebb and flow and is obviously now back and doing amazing things. But there were 3 or 4 years there where it wasn't doing anything, and people still, you know, hold it in high regard. And so, yeah, coming and doing that. And I, you know, I don't want to sort of say I was like a forecaster. I mean, it was 2018. Instagram was already, you know, whatever, 10 years old at that point. It was obvious that was happening. I just knew that there would be nothing that would beat Top Gear Grand Tour for me, you know, in England, and from like a budgetary standpoint. Not that it's all about the money, but money allows you to do things. And F1 would be the only other thing. And with the budget caps, F1 is just like, it's, you know, it just doesn't really allow for that kind of creativity. So yeah, it sort of became move to America, get in with Petrolicious, and then see what happens. And then yeah, I've sort of been out there for seven or 8 years now. And I'm very happy to say it's, you know, it is what I thought it was. You know, I do hate to be one of these sort of like LA idiots that sort of thinks the world begins and ends, and the car culture begins and ends with Los Angeles. But my God, there's a lot of cool cars and a lot of great car people out there. And I'm not saying that there aren't everywhere else. And in fact, you know, the new project I'm working on with Cars and Bids, which is a channel called Key, about car culture. We're doing a series about the car culture in basically everywhere that's not Los Angeles. You know, we're making a point of going to different cities, Seattle and New York, and you know, Vancouver and places like this, and getting into the thick of like what's the car culture like there, because we know it's there. It's just not as shouted about, you know, for better and for worse. So yeah, LA, a lot of fun. America, awesome. Cars good, TV good, Crash is bad. That's great. I don't know.
What makes great car content, though? You've worked with all these platforms, but I feel like everything you've touched has sort of turned to gold, or was gold, you know, when you got there, whatever. But they've all been these wonderful avenues. What is it that makes good car content, whether it's a big budget or small budget?
It's authenticity and it's creativity, right? Okay. It's like, and it's tough because I think we've all been so sort of I don't know, not brainwashed, but like to come back to it, Top Gear is kind of like the, you know, the nebulous of so much of this stuff. And like, and again, like
chart that rise, where most people got into it and where most people sort of have their main love of the show and have the most reverie about the episodes is like in that sort of second half of the BBC era where the money started getting spent and everything started getting a bit more outlandish and a bit more crazy. And they do those like, well, they were great films, but like, they do those like films where they'd like review very practical cars, but in very impractical ways, where they'd end up like storming a beach in a Ford Fiesta or whatever it was, just like, so it's really tricky because you get sort of conditioned into going, okay, to make good content, it needs to have this like weird, subversive, narrative or whatever. But like, no, like, and this is something we're finding out with this new project with Ryan and I is like, it's just authenticity. It's just, we've kind of come full circle, I feel like. And obviously I've got a propensity to think in those kinds of Top Gear Grand Tour terms, but we've come full circle and kind of gone, well, it's just got to be about two mates having fun with cars, like we are very lucky that we get to do this and we're going to bring you along for the ride. So I think that's it. And then I think beyond that, I think it's just creativity, but unburdened creativity, because again, I think we all get bogged down in like, it's got to be shot on a cinema camera. We need a camera car. We need this. We need that. But no, like it can be shot on an iPhone. And if it's good, well, DeMuro being a beautiful example of that, Mr. Handycam, it will endure. And, Doug's stuff will be there, being watched and enjoyed years after, all of the sort of like cinematic stuff has kind of fallen away because it will look dated and old, whereas Doug's stuff is timeless, because it's creative and it's authentic. So I think for me, that's what it is. And it's such a wishy-washy answer because how do you sell creative and authentic to a channel? It's very hard to, but I think those are the things that shine through. You got to sell what you can sell, but then those are the two things you got to get in there,
But that's the perfect answer because those are two things you can't fake.
Very good point. Yeah. Believe me, I've tried.
So you've been on your travels with Key, which is it's the creative side of Cars and Bids. Is that how we describe it? Or was the best way to?
Yeah. So Cars and Bids auction channel, auction site, obviously for enthusiast cars, founded by Doug DeMuro 5-6 years ago. Took on some extra funding and have a great partner now with this capital fund, and they really bolstered it, built out the business, and obviously built out the content side too. So Doug started doing a podcast, the This Car Pod, which is awesome. It's not a patch on this, but it's pretty good. And it's
excellent.
And
it's somewhere we're striving to get to. So
that's right.
Well, I think
it's fun, and that's important too.
That's right. Well, that's right. Yeah. Again, right. But yeah, the desire is there, or was there, from Cars and Bids, from the management there, for a sister channel which could go a little bit deeper into car culture and the people behind the cars. Because I think, we all love Doug and we all love Kenan and Filippo and Nick and those guys that make that podcast. And we all love their sort of laser focused, like nerd telepathy about cars. It's like insane and they're not just like that for the pod. They just are. It's incredible. And it's a level of knowledge that like most encyclopedias don't possess. But like, I think the desire was there for content that, can go a little bit deeper, not into like, the different trim levels of the, whatever, Chrysler Neon or whatever, but can sort of like dive into culture, dive into stories and questions and conversations. We've got big plans. We've only just launched the channel, so it's like it's such a big build up for like one YouTube video, which is all that's on there at the moment. But it's a good one.
It is indeed
really good one.
Oh, thank you. But we have big plans to just offer people good, again, authentic, honest, creative car content. We're doing it out of love. We don't ask anything, and no one does who posts stuff on YouTube, right? It's all free. Like, we're so lucky that we have these incredible people, creatives, making full-time living out of giving us free content, podcasts and everything. So yeah, we're just making cool car videos, guys, and we'd love it if you would come and watch them, because that lets us keep doing it, and hopefully you guys like it. And it's the most sort of Route One stuff, but like we just want to have fun in cars, and we're very lucky that we get to do it. So yeah, that's what it's about basically. Episode one of the, or no, I shouldn't say episode one, but the first film was a great documentary from my colleague Ryan Lopez on sort of a plotted history of JDM in America, like Japanese cars in America, from the first ever car that was imported here, which was an amazing thing to be able to get some access to. Through the sort of 55 years up until now, sort of through drifting, and then the role that a lot of TV shows and Initial D and Fast and Furious and that franchise kind of played in sort of taking these cars and sort of culturally appropriating them and making them something that kids and young people wanted to be into. And so it's a really good film. He talks to a drifter, and Ryan's a cool guy. Ryan knows people that I couldn't even hope to be in the same room as. So if you don't watch Key for anything else, watch it for Ryan's cool documentaries. They're very good. He's got another.
Really impressed with the script on that one. I don't know if it was 100% Ryan or it was a collaborative effort, but I really enjoyed the script.
Yeah. Well, I'll say it again, Dan, success has many fathers.
Very true. And are you going to claim the name Key? Was that your idea?
No, God, no, because I hate that name. Producer Sean will kill me. Key was not my first choice name. And I may have turned the air blue with you guys when we spoke before we came on air about the name, because for me, I don't know, Key, I think it might be something to do with my accent and the fact that a lot of my family are from Liverpool, but to me the K sound is very harsh. Key, like it doesn't roll off the tongue. It just it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it's an idea I don't like. And Key for me as a name, I didn't love it. I'm learning to love it. Our branding is beautiful. I will say that. We had a wonderful graphic designer come in and do some work for us, and Ryan really got us through there. And it looks good. And I'm sure to everyone else and to you beautiful Americans with your buttery smooth accents, it sounds awesome. But for me, sort of saying hello and welcome to Key, like it just sort of like shoots out of my mouth. I don't like it. But it's a good channel, guys. Please watch the videos.
It is.
What have we got to come on that channel? I know you were up seeing some friends of mine up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes,
Am I allowed
indeed.
to talk about that yet? Or
oh yeah, I think that will probably be out by the time this one comes out. Yeah, so you were a wonderful help with that, and as you always are. We're episode one or the first film was that lovely documentary about JDM culture. The next thing we'll be releasing is the first of what will be an ongoing series that we're calling Arrive and Drive, which is where, as I mentioned, I go and sort of immerse myself in different areas of car culture in different cities. So we've shot Seattle. I'm currently out here shooting an episode in Manhattan in downtown New York. And so if anyone has any ideas, anyone has any cool little enclaves of car culture in any of these amazing North American cities, let me know. Because we're just keen to come out and experience some of this great country and some of these awesome cars. We're also doing a film. We've got a wonderful, again, another really, really genuinely interesting documentary that Ryan has produced, where he has met with a young lady who's an OnlyFans creator, an adult content creator, who has just the most amazing collection of cars, real, honest, enthusiast cars. She and her husband wrench on them together, and they do it for the love of it. And her and Ryan have a very frank conversation about the interplay between what she does and what she likes to do, the collecting and the cars, and how the cars can help, but she doesn't want to sort of be seen as someone who's relying on the cars for clicks and things like that. So it's a really interesting piece, very thoughtfully and well put together, and obviously with great buy-in from our subject, a young lady called Jessie. I don't know. They won't all be as clever as that one. A lot of them will just be stupid stuff like us going for road trips. But isn't that just so fun? It's fun to shoot.
It's all about.
I'm genuinely excited for this content.
Oh, thank you.
It's something new. It's something different. And
thank you.
Yeah.
There's an open invite from Ryan if you want to reach out to the Denver region.
I'm telling you, we've got a great car scene here,
mate. I'm going to be in Denver I'm going to be in Denver next Wednesday. We're coming up to film with Earth Roamer. You know those guys that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Earth is it Earth Roamer?
Earth Roamer, Dustin, and
yeah. Fort Collins, I think.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things are fantastic. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, Denver's on the list. I think it's a flying visit that time, but I would love to come out maybe in the summertime, and we can spend a few days doing some fun car stuff.
You let me know.
Visit for Pikes Peak. That's the win.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's something I've never done. That's one to do, isn't it? Good thinking, Dan. Sort that out, Dan. Can I leave that with you? Will you sort that out?
Yeah, I'll make it happen. Just let me know when I can get that 40 grand check into my bank account. We'll get you a Maserati. It'll be amazing.
All right, mate. All right, I'm on it.
Actually, I think Dan prefers the Chevy Equinox at Pikes Peak. Is it
Ford?
The Ford.
Get it right.
God, I get that
we
wrong
went a couple of years ago, and long story short, we ended up getting on the mountain way too early and sleeping in a Ford Edge.
Oh no.
That's what it was.
But it was an amazing experience. It was life-changing. Like I had the whole of the trunk to myself. The boot,
the life-changing bit. Yeah,
it was. And just
sharp edges in that Ford Edge.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no bears attacked. It was amazing.
Oh, beautiful. Well, let's go for a 3-row if we're going to all be camping in the same car.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I look forward to that, and I trust that you will get in touch. We've got a really wonderful enthusiast community here, and I'd love to share it. So
that's what we love.
Joe, I've got to give a shout out to our mutual pal, Matt Hunter.
Oh, yes.
Matt was actually my date last night to a 40th anniversary screening of my favorite film and Dan's, Stand By Me.
You're kidding?
No
way. What a film.
It holds up so well. I think Matt's still recovering
now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Each, especially on the big screen, you pick up on things you wouldn't have picked up on. It just means something different to me as a 50-year-old than it did when I was 10 and saw it in the movie theater the last time,
Oh my gosh.
But Matt's the best, and he's how I know you. And
yes, just Matt. Gosh, I think we probably all have this. Just these wonderful friendships that are like pretty much exclusively exist within the DM section of your Instagram. But like I have such fond friendships with him and with a couple of other guys like that. A couple of them I've never met. Matt's a sweetheart, and again, it just speaks to how cool that our community is.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, you had a beer with another community member the other week, didn't you, Ryan?
Yeah, a guy by the name of Matt Henry, and Matt traveled all the way from Alabama to Denver just to have a couple beers with me, which isn't true. He came here for the hardware show at the convention center, but I really do appreciate him coming up. Really nice guy, and he has a daughter who just started working at PECLA at the Porsche Experience Center in LA. So there's that, and I really appreciated him coming up, and appreciate whenever anyone reaches out. It means a lot to us. And I guess on that note, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review. I see we just got our very first 1-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sorry
Alan.
about that, guys. The last didn't really do it for me.
So we need to get that average back up, everyone. So anyway, but so wonderful getting to know you, Joe, and hearing your stories and everything else. I hope you'll come back.
Oh,
yeah,
I would be honored.
This is a late night in New York for Joe, and he's given up his evening to come join us this evening. So
my
thank you.
No. Thank you for having me.
Before we close out the show, we are super close to announce a couple of new sponsors, but there is also availability for sponsorship. So please contact us if you're interested in sponsoring. We've obviously done a great job for various sponsors in the past. They've seen significant sales as a result of advertising with us. So if that's of interest, reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Indeed.
Until next week, what is that phrase that pays, Ryan?
Well, we're That Car Show, and always be driving. Joe, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, boys. It was a pleasure.
Until next week, we're out.
Yeah. Cheers.